Hello everyone and welcome back to AmmoMart.com, where you can find real firepower online. I'm very happy to have a guest with me today, Jim Abrams, who is a former Ohio Division of Natural Resources Supervisor, author, journalist. If you're interested, you can catch his weekly column on Courier.com, and a general friend to the outdoors. Good to have you with us today, Jim.
Always glad to be here.
Before we go any further, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Well, I actually have had about 35 years with the Department of Natural Resources here in Ohio. The bulk of that career spanned through the Division of Wildlife. And I was an officer, wildlife officer. Started out, actually changed names. It was game protector first, and then became wildlife officer in the mid-'80s in a name change. And I finished my career as a wildlife officer supervisor, and I was also one of the tactics instructors for the Division of Wildlife.
Really? What was that like for you?
It was a lot of fun. We spent, I started on the Firearms and Tactics training team in 1988.
Wow.
And I went to 2010 on the team, and it was a lot of fun. A lot of good training, and you hope what you teach people, especially in that atmosphere, when you consider what a wildlife officer does, everybody they check is going to have a gun or a knife, and it just goes to prove that little adage, not everybody, it isn't the gun that breaks the laws, because if that was true, wildlife officers would, be in a lot more trouble than the average officer. But when you train these people to deal with individuals under difficult circumstances, it's good to see them walk away, and everybody walk away safely, and that's a reward in itself.
Of course. Well, one of the reasons I was excited to get you on the show today was, as you know, it's hunting season.
Sure.
Bow's been in about a month. Chill is in the air, and pretty soon we'll move on into gun season.
Mm-hmm.
So, as your experiences in the field went, what was the number one citation that you had to issue to hunters? And if you could, tell me what the rationale was behind that sort of thing on their part, if you know it.
Well, I think after a while you get a feeling for what happens out in the field. And the number one infraction that I think that we'd run into is people getting on property without permission to be there.
Right.
And that has a several-fold effect on hunting. First of all, of course, it upsets landowners. Mm-hmm. It gives hunting a bad name.
Of course.
And so naturally we're there to protect that name as much as the resource itself and the property of the landowner. We're also there to protect the image of hunting. And people that break that law actually have an effect on that image. And so we want to keep that clean and make sure that people understand how important it is to obey the laws. And so people get excited in the hunt. Maybe they go a little too far. Maybe they hit that edge and think, oh, over there, it looks pretty good. And
right.
they take that step over, and landowner sees it, and it's an issue. Probably the second most common problem that we have these days are going to be hunter orange issues.
Right.
People don't wear the proper hunter orange during the gun seasons. That's the only time it's required during hunting seasons in Ohio, is during gun seasons in the state. And all hunters in the field, whether you're bow hunting for deer or not, you've got to wear hunter orange. It goes without saying that we want to make sure when you're using a weapon that can reach out 100, 200 yards potentially, you want to make sure of your target, of course. And so that hunter orange is there to protect the hunter, but also other hunters, civilians, and just make it overall. And of course, I can't overemphasize that hunting itself is an extremely safe sport.
Oh yeah.
Watch, a high school football game, kids get hurt there. On a regular basis, and hunting goes through, and there may be a half dozen incidents in the state. And if you look at 200, 300,000 hunters in the field during the week of deer season or more, that's a very low rate.
I had recently looked up some statistics and found that in the hunting season in 2015-16 in Ohio, there were only 13 incidents that required people to go to the emergency room, and only 3 of those were shootings.
Correct.
All 3 of those, it seemed like, it's hard to tell to get into the real details of the case, were actually just self-inflicted in and out of tree stands or over a fence perhaps, but the incidences are quite low.
Yeah, they are, and probably a lot of those incidents occur on or around the vehicle because of people poor gun handling.
Oh, really?
techniques. And I know you guys in the ammo business and in the gun business, it's all about gun handling.
Sure.
And, you know, the muzzle is the most dangerous part of the gun. Keep it pointed in a safe direction. And the hunter incidents, a lot of the hunter incidents that I found myself investigating, along with our investigative units, involves somebody pointing that muzzle in the wrong direction and that gun maybe going off unintentionally and somebody gets hurt. And a lot of times it's taking the gun in and out because they don't obey basic gun laws, like don't have that loaded gun in the vehicle when you're out hunting, things like that. And, you know, the excitement of the hunt, I get it. Sometimes people become so focused on their quarry, and this usually occurs during deer season where there's a lot more excitement. They become so focused on that sometimes, especially a young or inexperienced hunter may become too focused on the deer, and they don't look around. And that's where that hunter orange plays in. But there's really no excuse around the vehicle getting in and out. Those should be unloaded guns. I could tell you lots of stories about, you know, people literally unloading their guns and having it go off because they were unfamiliar with the gun. They might have been borrowed. And so while rare, you still want to safeguard, keep that muzzle, because of course in the gun business we know if the muzzle's safe, the gun's safe.
You got it. Absolutely. Staying with safety for a little bit longer, I know you've heard about all of the don'ts. Do you have any do's for potential hunters this season, something they should keep in mind, perhaps more than anything else besides muzzle discipline?
Well, of course, wear that hunter orange like we talked about, get permission. Probably one that a lot of people really violate, and there's no law that says you have to do it, but wear some kind of a safety strap when you're in a tree stand. A lot of people are involved in falls from tree stands. Most, I'm going to say, get up, walk away, and are a little embarrassed, but I was involved in two where there was actually a gentleman was up in a tree, fell 25 feet. His wife didn't know where he was.
Wow.
He broke his pelvis. We didn't find him till the next day, so I helped carry him out almost 200 yards out of the woods. So he spent a very uncomfortable night out in the woods where nobody knew where he was. And although he said he made friends with a possum later.
Possum didn't drag him out, huh?
No. I tried to cuddle up with him, I think.
I see.
But there was that one. And another gentleman, again, basic gun safety, was going up into his tree stand. And how else do you get your firearm or your bow in your tree stand? You use a line and you pull it up. He tied it in his trigger guard.
Oh, no.
See anything wrong there?
Yeah, a little bit.
And he made sure his safety was on, except the safety happened to be on next to the trigger guard. As he was hoisting it up, he was on the ground because he knew, I don't want to climb with it. It went off and hit him in the jaw, 12-gauge shotgun. So once again, that's a horror story. That's 1 in 34 years.
Right.
And there's a lot of hunters between then and now. So I think it's just a good common sense, and he had a lapse of good common sense in that particular situation. Caused him a lengthy hospital visit. He ended up being fine, but it could have been avoided.
I'd heard that nationwide $615 million has been spent since the early 2000s on hunter education programs. And it would seem like nationally that trend of accidents is actually going down, which is a great thing.
It's always been very low, but education is always a good thing. And there's actually been a new influx of inexperienced hunters entering in. And a lot of times, back in the 1960s, when it was first really put together and on, it was really thought of, oh, this is kind of a kids program, you know, this is for high school and younger. And today, more and more of these courses are being designed with adults in mind, because there are a lot of women that have entered the hunting market, a lot of men that are just looking for a different way to spend their time. We've gone through a lot of different generational changes, and those changes have, they're going to happen. And so you have to keep up your instruction and teaching with those generational changes. And so what used to be a lot of those kids in grade school that hunted are not starting to hunt until they're a little older, simply because they were so much involved in school. You've got kids, right?
Yep.
And how was their time in high school?
Overprogrammed.
You bet. And how many outside activities were you running them around to?
Too many.
Yeah, there you go. And so basically, the kids are so busy hanging out with their buds and playing video games right now that all of a sudden, you know, when they get to be 16, 17, 18, and dad's still going hunting and mom's going hunting, it's time for them to start thinking about it. And then their friendships start to broaden too. And when they get into college, they broaden more. And every step in their life, it broadens and you meet more people. And you start to pick up, yeah, I would like to kind of get involved in that. And that's so the whole hunter education program had to be adjusted just for that.
I went bear hunting in Canada 25 years ago, and I had a hunting license, but I had to show proof of a hunter safety education course.
Sure.
So I sign up with the ODNR, and I'm surrounded by 12-year-olds. And I've actually heard, to your point, that that's completely not the case anymore. That lots of new adults doing it, and it's all on the websites for whatever state you live in. Typically, when the classes are, they're pretty frequent. You don't have a lot of time invested in it. I think it's a Saturday or two, depending on the state.
Right. And even right now, you can actually take it online as an adult.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So you can take the entire course online as an adult.
Wow.
So that you don't want to form a bottleneck when you're trying to, because the Division of Wildlife, it's about wildlife. And the Department of Natural Resources is about the Department of Natural Resources and preserving a heritage. But how do you preserve a heritage? You're selling a product.
Yep.
And so the Division of Wildlife is actually selling hunting and fishing to you. Yep. They want you to participate. So they try to educate you. And what they found out was basically your hunter education courses had begun to develop a bottleneck. In your instance, you were in there with a bunch of 12-year-olds.
I was.
That can be a little uncomfortable for some people's personalities because they feel like if they have a question, they're afraid to ask it in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds. You know, because, gee, how's that old, am I dumber than a 12-year-old?
Right. Go back to second grade there.
Yeah. And so they don't ask the questions they need answers to.
Interesting.
When you go to a format online, you can actually email a question in if you have a question.
Okay.
Or you've got all this online data and videos that you can view. Plus, most of these hunter education classes that you can take also transfer to other states. So once you get your certificate, it's good in about every state, including Canada.
That's awesome information, Jim. I wasn't aware that you could do all of that online.
Yep.
Great information to have, especially for our viewers.
Yeah, and it's actually a really easy website to reach. It's wildohio.gov.
Awesome.
So wildohio.gov, and it's not case sensitive.
Well, I appreciate you spending some time with us today, Jim, and being a great friend to the outdoors. Good luck on your book. Jim has been actually selected to chronicle the 150-year history of the Ohio Division of Natural Resources. Book is due out sometime in late 22, maybe early 2023. Well, good luck with that.
I look forward to it. The divisions, I was there for at least a portion of that, and it's going to be a fun project.
Well, good luck on it, and thanks again, Jim. Really appreciate it.
Glad to
Thank
do it. You know, it's always a pleasure to show up and around my friends at AmmoMart. They do a great job, great ammunition, great opportunity to deal with a lot of great people. One of the things we alluded to during our little talk today was the book, The Division of Wildlife, is actually coming out, and it's the 150th anniversary is in 2023. And it was decided that they'd like to do something special. They did something a little bit special in the 125th anniversary and a little bit on the 100th anniversary, but 150 years for a state organization, conservation organization, is pretty astounding. And that actually, to give you a little taste of what started it, was in the late 1880s, fish in Ohio were taking a dramatic drop. A lot of it was from the pollution and deforestation and the muddying up of a lot of streams, a lot of lakes, and a lot of the lakes actually didn't even exist at the time. And it really concerned the legislature. And when you consider that the state of Ohio had just been a state since 1803, this wasn't long after, only 60, 70 years after the state actually began to exist. And it was determined that they really wanted to come up with a productive nature to try to bring this fishery back to Ohio, because it was very important to people back then. A lot of fishing that was being done was as much for subsistence as it was for actually for fun. They were doing it to actually put food on the kitchen table. And so the legislature created a Department of Conservation at that time, and the first wildlife officers went to work. At that time, of course, they were called wardens. So we're going to start with that history, and we're going to work it up till 2023 and look at the changes. And this book project is going to encompass all of that, be pretty photo heavy, but the goal right now, as we initially are planning this project, is to bring it to you in stories. And instead of being a sterile chronological history of the division of wildlife that you might see in a textbook, we want to bring you stories of the people that made that division. Because no matter what happens, whether it's AmmoMart, whether it's your favorite gun shop like Buffalo Trading Company or any other organization, the organization is just the storefront for the people behind it. And so I think looking at the Division of Wildlife, this project is going to give you a look at the people that made it and why it exists the way it does today. So I hope it gets done successfully. I hope that you have the opportunity to grab it when you can. And I look forward to being back and talking to you all again.